everything in your company, all of the profitability, all of your salaries, all of your bosses' salaries, every dollar, yen, euro, yuan that comes into your organization has a pricing decision attached to it.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
Man, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the associated relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today our guest is Kevin Mitchell, and here are 3 things you want to know about Kevin before we start. He is the president of the Professional Pricing Society. Not only does he know a lot about pricing, but he also knows about running an association, which fascinates me. And he doesn't like to brag about it, but he's actually made hundreds of dollars as an amateur musician. Welcome, Kevin.
Mark, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you today. And yes, I've got great stories from my musical background. Literally back in the day, dozens of CDs sold, hundreds of dollars made, very famous in, let's say, about 2 clubs in Atlanta, Georgia, where I am right now, if you go back in time a few years. But thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you today.
You're still working? I thought you retired on that by now.
I'm still working a little bit. That's in a special fund for special expenses somewhere that I've lost track of a long time ago.
Exactly. Okay, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How did you get into pricing?
That is a very good question. I guess none of us are born to be pricing people. I know that I've talked with Professional Pricing Society members from across the globe. Some of us were interested in it. Some of us were, let's say, voluntold that they were their company's new pricing person or new pricing department. For me, pricing actually is a bit of a family business. So there's a gentleman in Atlanta that a lot of us have heard of named Eric Mitchell, who was a pricing practitioner 50 years ago, way before pricing was cool. He worked for, I'm thinking about when I was growing up, he worked for Ford, Xerox, and IBM and Intel and some others. When I was a small child, grew a little tired of corporate America, became a consultant, started writing books around the same time that some of the other visionaries in the pricing discipline were doing the same. I'm thinking around the same time as Tom Nagel and Reed Holden and Kent Monroe and some others. They were all consultants. And one day he was like, I'm tired of competing with you guys. You write me an article about elasticity. You write me an article about negotiations. You write me an article about analytics. I'm going to make a newsletter, bring everyone together. And that is actually how Professional Pricing Society started. So it would have been my job as a middle school and high school student when school was off during Christmas or during the summertime to build his database, to mail out early newsletters, which I have great stories of carrying boxes of Kinko's Yellow Canary newsletters, uphill both ways in the snow in Atlanta, Georgia, and Phoenix, Arizona, and various places. And so for me, it is a bit of a family business. Eric Mitchell is still doing very well. He retired in 2008, and so I've been back at PPS for almost 15 years now, 14 years now, since end of 06, beginning of 07. And so if none of us are born to be pricing people, I may have been in the position where I was pretty close. I grew up around hearing him talk about it from going back to when I was a child, and have been around PPS in its infancy and back now as we are continuing to grow. So I have a lot of experience around pricing, a lot around sales and running an association. And I'm very lucky in that Professional Pricing Society, we have a great team. Obviously, we have great partners across the globe and get great opportunities to talk on podcasts like this. So thanks.
Hey, so it's interesting. This morning, I was thinking about the conversation that you and I are probably going to have. And one of the things that I'd never thought of before in the world of associations is running an association is a lot like running a subscription business. Because nowadays, all of us in pricing, we're thinking, well, how do I help companies with subscriptions? In fact, I've got a new book out. It's called Win, Keep, Grow. but I think you deal with the exact same issues. Do you think of the association like a subscription?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a few different revenue streams. One of them is that at our heart, we're a membership society. So of course, that's a pure subscription model. We started off with, again, the Canary Yellow newsletter that has a 35, almost 40-year history now. And a lot of our revenue streams are built on kind of a subscription basis, where basically with a fee, you can take all you want and take advantage of all of our offerings, be they electronic, things around our events, and things like that. So it is interesting that a lot of the talk in the business world in pricing and revenue management is around subscriptions or blank as a service, anything and everything as a service. So yeah, as an association, we've been in that vein for quite a while here, and yeah, that's basically how we've been doing business.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to see that. Let's shift gears and talk about pricing, pricing people, pricing careers. But before, I know PPS. I've been to PPS many times. You've let me speak there a couple times. In fact, I think I spoke when your dad was running it many, many, many years ago. But what I was really curious about is, do you think most members are pricing professionals, or do you think they're people outside of pricing who want to know more about pricing?
That's a good question. And we do have a mixture. I would say that we probably have a majority being the first one, people who are pricing professionals who have pricing or revenue or margin somewhere in their job title or as one of their main company duties. But we do have people who, let's say, are pricing adjacent, who might be in sales, marketing, finance, product management, who would consider pricing to be a part of their job, but maybe not their main job if you met them at a cocktail party and asked what they do. But since it's a part of their job, of course, they do want to educate themselves, learn more about it, and basically become more expert in the areas that kind of have that Venn diagram overlap with what they would do on a daily basis. If I had to estimate, let's say 2/3 or 70%, or maybe even a little bit more, people who would consider pricing as their main job or one of their main jobs, and maybe 30%, 25, 30%, maybe a third in that second category there, people who have a different job function, but who have such a big overlap with pricing or who work with pricing people closely in their organization that they want to be up on the latest and greatest strategies, tactics, and skill sets, and basically want to be in touch with everything that's going on in our part of the business world there. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture, a little bit more on the first side, I think.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And so here's a hard question that I've always struggled with answering, and I'm going to give it to you. You're at a cocktail party and someone comes up to you and says, "What do you do?" And you actually answer, "I'm a pricing professional."
Right.
And I guarantee you the next words out of their mouth are, "What's that?"
Right.
So what's that?
I would say it depends on the organization and the individual, but in some organizations, I might say as a pricing professional, it's my job to make sure that my company remains profitable or improves their margins or basically does better in the big picture. And the reasons for that is a lot of people can connect to that and say, oh, okay, that makes sense. But also being that pricing in combination with sales and marketing and finance and these other parts of the organization, I mean, they become the engine that basically can drive the company. They, 100% of everyone's salary comes in conjunction with or is connected to a pricing decision at some level, as far as things like research and development, pricing in sales and marketing and finance and other groups would fund all of that, and we're a part of that. So I would say for a lot of individuals, pricing people, it's our job to make sure that we keep the lights on and keep everything running. And we do that because a lot of people invest a lot of resources in creating whatever it is that our company does. It's our job to make sure that we are adequately compensated for that. So it can, of course, it can depend, but another way might be to put it is that the price is often the first impactful thing about a product or service. and it is our job to manage that. That can lead you in a lot of different ways there. And
Yep.
basically, there are a lot of things around that where it is a bit of a head scratcher if you meet someone at a cocktail party and say what you do, but with a little explanation there, kind of tying it to the P&L or tying it to the operations or to the profitability of an organization, I think there are ways to get it across. And also, Mark, one thing that I often encourage pricing people to do, the PPS members worldwide, the people that we see at our events, is that we need to basically puff out our chests a little bit and be proud of what we do, because there are a lot of organizations that have had great sales organizations, have had great products and not done well and had to lay off people or underperformed because they were not as stringent about their pricing regulations and basically keeping things where they are as they should have been. So business literature is full of examples like that. Companies that had great ideas, had great products, and are not around because probably they didn't have enough focus on that bottom line. And basically that's what we do.
Yep. Long answer, but I still loved it.
I'm sorry about my long answer there. I could be a little happy and long-winded on the topic.
One of the things I pulled out of what you said, which correlates with something I say a lot, is 99% of what a company does is to create value.
Right.
And pricing is the only thing that captures the value we create.
Absolutely.
So
that is right. Think of all the R&D, all of the product development, all of the marketing, all of the infrastructure around a company. Yeah, your company has two things: to create products, services, mixture thereof that is marketable. And for pricing people, it's our job to make sure that we are compensated on all of that value that is created. A good shorter way to explain it. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice. So let's talk about pricing education for a second. And before I toss you this big softball, let me explain to you what I think of as the three big areas that I think pricing people really need to be great at. And it probably goes with their careers. And I would say pricing analysts probably have to be great at data and understanding the mechanics or the data that's going on.
Right.
Then you get pricing directors, pricing managers, and they're much more into pricing strategy and trying to figure out what we should be doing, what's possible. And then the hard skill that I think so few pricing people actually have is, let's call it leadership or influence or soft skills, however you want to define that. And so I'm going to toss that off to you and say, tell me what you think of those three things. Is that accurate? Go.
Definitely accurate. To be a great pricing professional, you have to be an artist and also a scientist at certain levels. Certainly, you do need the mathematical, the data analysis background, but I think, and as you mentioned, as you touched on, sometimes we can be lacking on the communication, on the negotiation with others inside and outside of our company. I think both are very, very important about what we're trying to get across. It's one thing if you present, let's say, a 25-year veteran of your sales force with reams and reams of data. All the data might be correct. You may have poured over it. It could be absolutely correct. But in order to talk to him or her, you're going to have to be able to communicate what has been going on, what, if anything, we can do to improve, and what's going to happen next. And so there does have to be that communication element, that soft skills element, the negotiation element, and also the managerial strategic leadership elements there. So there are a few things that come in. And Mark, another way that I like to think about this is, ideally, if you are a great pricing person, you may not be the most popular person in your organization. Sometimes there's a little good cop / bad cop involved in there, but you should have great contacts and be able to have that nexus and touch a lot of different parts of your organization and be connected there. And so, yes, analytical skills, data skills, strategic skills, managerial skills, communication, soft skills, negotiation, artist, and scientist. A little of both, depending on the day, might shift from 40-60 one way to 60-40 the other way, but definitely have to have all of those parts there.
And so I think of it almost as I'm going to start as an analyst, I'm going to move up to a manager, and eventually I'm going to learn the leadership influence so that I can actually change the company. And so I would think of that as a career path. Does that fit at all the way PPS does education?
It does. We are lucky in that with our depth and breadth, and I'm thinking about within the certified pricing professional designation, within the CPP itself, there are 6 levels with dozens upon dozens of opportunities in each level. And they kind of go through a process like that, where core pricing skills and price setting, what we would think of as maybe some of the more analytical skills, and then moving up to the managerial skills to negotiation, and then the strategy and things like that. So yes, we are built where there could be a progression there. And what we do for a lot of our big member companies is we ask for their help in segmenting their large teams and say, okay, these people are new analysts. They have 1 or 2 years experience. Here's another group that is on a manager track. They have a few more years of experience. They're more involved with a lot of different moving parts in our organization. And here's a part that is in senior management. And what we've done is design specific, very different training paths for each of those using our group of faculty, our online courses, our in-person workshops when we get back to having in-person workshops, our virtual workshops now. So yes, absolutely. We have lots of opportunities, and there's a lot of great literature out there, a lot of different organizations who do pricing. The big 4 accounting firms have pricing centers of excellence. There are a lot of pricing specific consultancies and pricing software companies. And so there's a lot of information out there, not only for the analyst level, for the data level, and around the managerial level, talking about strategy and negotiations and basically setting a frame for the business there. So yeah, a lot of opportunities around that, and definitely not one size fits all.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. So although I don't really like talking about this whole COVID thing, are there things around COVID besides the fact that we don't do in-person meetings anymore, or even not related to COVID, but just other industry changes that you see driving our world of pricing?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it is obviously a lot of people are making decisions. If I could steal a computer science, electrical engineering term here, a lot of organizations in their purchasing supply chain organizations are acting more in serial now than in parallel, partially because of the pandemic. It can be harder kind of to get through that train and to get decisions made. So of course, that's affected the way that pricing people have to work. In a lot of instances, I'm hearing from our member companies that the purchasing decision is a little bit more drawn out now. It could be because of some slight disconnects where it's not as easy to get 10 people in one room at one time. You might get 8 of them on a Zoom, but the actual decision maker may be distracted or maybe on a different call. Also, budgets are a little stretched right now. We still have economic uncertainty now, which of course affects pricing directly in a lot of different ways. So it depends on your industry, on your vertical to some extent, but certainly the pandemic has affected the way that we do business. And I remember in one of our virtual meetings, we did one of our presenters had a quick live poll trivia question and asked, okay, compared to pre-pandemic, are you about the same as far as amount of things going on? Are you much busier, or are you less busy than you were pre-pandemic? And overwhelmingly, it was people responding that they were much busier now than they were pre-pandemic. There can be a little pressure on margins. And as you know, that means that the 1% that you can gain from pricing has a bigger effect. So there may be more focus on the pricing organization internally from your own company, with a little bit more stress externally from your customer base, from your marketplace, because their budgets may be stretched and they have a little economic uncertainty as well. So pricing people right now, as far as their duties, a lot of them feel that they are getting a lot busier from both ends. They're getting more attention internally, a little bit more pressure externally, and looking to capitalize on their resources there. Some of us are in industries where we are a little bit busier or a lot busier post-pandemic. Some of us are in industries that have been badly hit because of the pandemic, but really it doesn't change a lot from a pricing person's perspective about the nuts and bolts of your organization. Those may not have changed as much as we would think in the past, let's say 13 months since the pandemic started. So a lot of it right now, what I'm hearing from pricing professionals worldwide is we are surviving, and now we are getting back into a mind frame where we're going to look at thriving. We're going to remember our company goals, our strategies, where we're strong, where we're not as strong, and we're going to remember to get back our focus on what we're trying to do there.
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting answer, because I think there are both inside and outside pressures. The outside pressures, demand curves changed all over the place. And so you don't really know, were you watching your own, what's the value changing in your marketplace? And then the uncertainty inside, we all work from home, we're taking care of our kids. There's so much going on.
Right.
Like, okay, there's just this uncertainty. So how do we deal with all that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell me, what's the future of pricing? What are you hearing from all the people you talk to?
That's a very interesting question, because what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that I would like to make a dichotomy, if I could, Mark, between the actual quote pricing, unquote, and what pricing people actually do. And the reason for that dichotomy is there are people that I've known for a very long time who I know are primarily pricing people, but their actual job titles now may not reflect that. I mean, it might be a customer success team, a customer improvement team, a margin improvement team, something in that, or they could be on a product marketing side or in a business unit. And so what I'm seeing as a future of pricing is that people are getting more involved in pricing activities. We've been basically saying that, hey, we're the best lever to pull if you want to increase your profitability, not only short term, but medium term and long term, because we all have good memories. And so I think a lot more people are getting involved in pricing activities, but that does not necessarily translate to a lot more people with the job titles: pricing analyst, pricing manager, pricing director, pricing vice president, and we hope chief pricing officer or senior VP of revenue management, or some other titles like that. So what we are seeing is that if we think of pure pricing people, if we think of an archery target, and the bullseye being people like you and I who have pricing as part of our company's names, that bullseye, I would say, is consistent. But what's growing might be the 7s, 8s, and 9s around that bullseye, where a lot of people who are in product development groups, product management groups, in business units, in marketing, and other fields are becoming more invested in the factors around pricing and the importance of prices. So the future of pricing, right now we are in a state where, of course, we've all seen the statistics where we create more data every 18 months than has existed in the history of mankind up until 18 months ago or something like that. So there is a lot more emphasis on data availability, data analysis, making do with imperfect data, and things like that. There's also instant information, both from our company sides and from our customer side as well, which makes for a lot of interesting interactions and translations there. A lot of time I'm hearing now that once people finally contact your sales department, the deal is essentially already made, and it's just a negotiation around pricing because they've got instant research. We're all good at doing searches and figuring out what something should be, what it should do, what it should cost, and so on and so forth. So a lot more instant information, a lot more of a reliance on data, but in spite of that, there still is that emphasis on negotiations and soft selling skills, both inside and outside of our own organizations there. So,
yeah, I think that was a great answer. And I got to say about our company names, I don't know about you, but I thought about changing my name to Impact Value, because it relates more to what I do, but it doesn't have the same impact.
No pun intended. I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. And within PPS. And one interesting thing about us, and I have to admit, I don't know why, but outside of North America, we're the PPS, but in North America, we're just PPS, or Professional Pricing Society. And I think of it in a lot of ways, and I've had discussions with people about this. We know that if you're Southern and have a strong appetite like I do, that KFC stands for Kentucky Fried Chicken, but they don't want to emphasize fried anymore, even though we all still eat fried foods, because they want to branch out and have more grilled options and salads. And 50 years from now, if we're all vegetarians, there still may be a KFC. We just won't know what the F stands for.
Right.
There's still going to be a PPS and an impact value or an impact pricing. The term may shift over a little while, but more and more people will actually do pricing. They just may not think of it. People are still going to eat fried food. They just don't want to be reminded about it in a lot of cases. And so KFC, PPS, impact value, there may be shifts in the, let's say, nomenclature there, but at our heart, it's still around basically what we do and making sure that we're compensated for the goods and services that we provide.
Yeah, nice. Okay, final tough question for you. What's the one piece of pricing advice you give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
I want to remind everyone that everything in your company, all of the profitability, all of your salaries, all of your bosses' salaries, every dollar, yen, euro, yuan that comes into your organization has a pricing decision attached to it. It could be made by you and your team. It could be made more by your customers. It could be made by the market in whole. But very simply, your profits, which is where our salaries come from, where we reinvest in our communities, where we reinvest in our research and development for the next line of products, all of that simply comes down to a profit, which is just your price times your quantity sold minus your cost at a very basic level. So the price affects all of that. It's very important. We do not get the attention, the compensation, the recognition, the training, the development, the education that we need in spite of our importance. So we have a bit of an uphill battle there. But we as pricing people can still be proud of our effects on our organizations. I heard someone say that pricing saves jobs, which is one that I like a lot. And basically, all of the money that comes into any organization, and therefore all of our salaries, all of the benefits that we get, that's all tied to a pricing decision at one point. And it's just a matter, are we going to have our influence in it? Are we going to let the marketplace decide? Are we going to let the customers decide? In some cases, that might be the right choice. But it's so important that we should all be in the mind frame that we're going to learn as much about it as we can in order to make the best decisions for ourselves, for our companies, for our organizations, and for all of the people in our organizations who work so hard to create the value in the products and services that we deliver to the marketplace.
Nice, nice. So Kevin, I'm going to take your 5-minute answer and I'm going to say it in one quick sentence.
Absolutely. Please do.
Every piece of revenue is the result of a pricing decision.
100%. That is correct.
I love that answer. That was awesome. That was awesome. All right, Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Mark, for the opportunity to talk with you as well. I enjoyed the discussion. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kevin Mitchell. You can also email me. I'm simply Kevin, Kevin, at pricingsociety.com. And you can always check the Pricing Society website, pricingsociety.com. Of course, there also for more information about our organization. And please let us know what we can do for you.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. And we'll have your a link to your LinkedIn page in our show notes so people can find it relatively easily.
Absolutely. I look forward to connecting with everyone.
Yeah. Episode 115 is all done. One of our listeners, Scott Sinning, recently wrote, "This is a must-listen podcast for business leaders. Mark and his guests cover timely topics with an interesting and fun approach. I look forward to hearing diverse insights about pricing strategy to grow my knowledge as a pricing leader and advisor. I think it's a must-listen for business leaders and pricing professionals who are serious about improving their profitability." Can I say thank you, Scott? In fact, I also sent him a signed copy of my new, not yet released book, Win, Keep, Grow: How to Price and Package Your Subscription Business. I'll do the same for you if you're in the US and you leave me a review. If you're outside the US, I'll put your name on a list and send you a digital version once it's available to me. Besides leaving a review, please tell a friend. I am so grateful for all the help you listeners give. And finally, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast or about pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact.